Today, we're doing an analysis based on a report on the import and export of China's paper packaging industry products. I know, reports can be very confusing. All those numbers that are so hard to picture. So my solution is make it interesting. Today's story is one about how the global economy is shifting right under our feet. Today, we're going to decode China's paper packaging trade data and how it reveals a market that isn't collapsing, is transforming. So let's start with this number, negative 1.44. Kind of underwhelming, right? This is a big headline figure for China's paper packaging trade, and at first glance you might just shrug it off or move on, but trust me, this little number is a tip of a massive iceberg. So does this mean the market's in crisis? Is this the beginning of the end, or is demand just falling off a huge cliff? Well, the short answer is nope, not even close. So what's really happening here is actually way more fascinating. What we're looking at here isn't a crash, it's a fundamental restructuring. The entire rulebook for what makes packaging valuable is being torn up and rewritten as we speak. Okay, so now let's peel back the first layer. Look at this. Exports basically flat, down just a little bit, but imports, well, they've absolutely plummeted. We're talking at almost 9%. See, this isn't a demand problem. This tells us something else is going on. It's more about substitution. Either domestic producers are stepping up and replacing foreign stuff, or customers are just tightening their belts and downgrading to save a box. And that leads us right to the heart of this whole story. We're seeing a massive shift in priorities here. It's all about performance over pretty. Just take a look at corrugated boxes, the workhorses of the packaging world. These are boxes that get things from A to B, the backbone of e-commerce and logistics. They're up nearly 12%. This is packaging that has to work. It has to be tough, reliable. It's all about performance. But then you take a look at folding cartons and it's the exact opposite story. They're down almost 7%. And this is your pretty packaging, the stuff that's designed to look good on a retail shelf and catch your eye. In a tough economy, guess what gets cut first? The aesthetics. The focus shifts to the essentials. So what we're witnessing here is this classic textbook shift. It's a move away from brand-driven packaging and squarely into performance-driven packaging. So right now, for example, the companies that are winning aren't the ones making the most beautiful box. They're the ones making the box that just plain works, works better, stronger, more efficient. Function is absolutely dominating form here. All right, let's switch gears and tackle a big one, eco-friendly packaging. With all the buzz about banning plastics, you think that paper-based alternatives would just be flying off the shelf, right? Well, the data tells a much more complicated story. I mean, everyone just assumes that stuff like molded pulp, for food containers is booming. It seems like a total no-brainer. Plastic is out, pulp is in. Easy win, right? But then you take a look at the numbers, and yeah, exports of molded pulp products are actually down by over 14%. Well, it turns out that just not being plastic isn't the golden ticket everyone thought it was. And if you thought that was a surprise, hold on. The story for bamboo tableware is even worse. It's an absolute collapse, down over 55%. This is a huge red flag. It's screaming that green hype is all by itself just doesn't cut it anymore. So what on earth is going on? Why is this happening? Well, it's because international buyers are looking for a lot more than just eco-friendly sticker on the box. For example, they're dealing with brutal price wars. They have incredibly strict quality standards for things like, does it smell weird? Is it grease proof? And on top of all of that, they have to navigate a total minefield of compliance regulations about food context and restricted chemicals, performance, and also safety. Those are complete deal breakers nowadays. Okay, so let's circle back to that huge drop in imports we talked about earlier. It's not just a bad number. If you know how to read it, it's basically a treasure map. It actually points directly to the biggest unmet needs in the domestic market. Check this out. While total imports are down almost 9%, there's a little niche category called containers, that just exploded. It's up over 88%. This is where the real high value story is hiding. We're not talking about basic commodities here. These are highly specialized products. And this brings us to the really important idea of spec gaps. What's a spec gap? It's the reason companies import stuff in the first place. They need a very specific level of performance or a particular compliance certification that they just can't get reliably from local suppliers. That 88% growth, that represents a massive gapping opportunity for any domestic producer who can step in and fill those gaps. So we've seen what is changing in the market. So now let's talk about where it's changing. The global map of demand is completely being redrawn here. The key thing to remember is that demand isn't just vanishing, it's moving. This is a perfect example. Look at the difference. Exports to the United States are down more than 27%. At the same time, exports to Vietnam have shot up by almost 34%. This is a China plus one strategy playing out in real time here. Companies are moving their factories, diversifying their supply chains, but here's a kicker. Even when the factories move, they often still need to buy high-performance packaging from China. This big geographic shift creates entirely new technical problems to solve. Shipping to Southeast Asia, you're fighting brutal heat and suffocating humidity every step of the way. So all of a sudden, things like wet strength paper and moisture-resistant coatings go from being nice to haves to absolutely essential. So when you put all these pieces together, what does it mean? It means that the rules for how you win in the paper packaging game have fundamentally changed. So here it is, the playbook for what works now and in the near future. For your products, you got to bet on performance, wet strength, functional barriers, making things stronger but lighter. Commercially, your strategy should be all about import replacement, targeting those spec gaps we talked about with fully documented compliance solutions. They're really necessary nowadays. And for your market focus, you double down on those South Asian supply chains and you treat the US and Europe as compliance first markets. Get the paperwork right or don't even bother, and really it all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. In today's volatile global market, your customers are not buying paper, they're buying certainty. Certainty that a product will perform, certainty that it meets all the regulations, certainty that it will be delivered on time. The companies that get this are selling confidence.